All right. Ready to jump into something pretty interesting. Today, we're going to be looking at the European Accessibility Act.
The EAA.
Yeah, the EAA. Set to, well, change a lot of things online, starting June 2025.
What I find interesting is that it's not just about, making websites look nicer. It's really about how we think about digital spaces
Yeah.
and who gets to use them, really.
Yeah, exactly. Like the other day, I was trying to book a flight,
Oh, yeah.
and the airline's website, it was just like a nightmare.
Really?
Tiny fonts, confusing layouts. I couldn't even use my keyboard.
Yeah,
It was like they were trying to keep people out.
It sounds frustrating.
It was, and it got me thinking, like, how many people experience this every day
Yeah,
because of how websites are built.
you're totally right, and that's a perfect example of why the EAA is so important.
Yeah.
It's recognizing that the digital world should be accessible to everyone, no matter their ability.
Right.
The Act impacts a range of things from websites and mobile apps to even physical kiosks, like the ones you see at train stations and airports.
That's a lot to cover. So where do we even begin with this?
Well, the source material dives into something called WCAG 2.1 at the AA level.
Okay, that's pretty technical. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, so think of WCAG as a set of guidelines
Okay.
for making digital content accessible. They cover things like navigation, readability, and even how images are presented.
Okay.
The EAA specifically references the AA level, which is like a baseline for accessibility.
Okay, so like a checklist to make sure websites are inclusive.
Exactly.
What are some of the things on that checklist?
Well, one of the key principles is clear navigation. Imagine a website like a well-organized library.
Yeah.
You should always know where you are and how to get to other sections.
Right.
No more getting lost in a maze of menus and links.
Exactly, yeah.
Another key aspect is readability. So the text on a website needs to be easy to see, easy to understand. The EAA requires sufficient contrast between the text and the background colors.
Okay.
For example, light gray text on a white background would be nearly impossible to read.
Oh, yeah, it makes me think of all those like stylish websites with
Yeah.
the barely there text, like
Right.
they're going for exclusive, not inclusive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The EAA wants to make sure everyone feels welcome online,
Yeah.
not just those who can, decipher the designer's artistic vision.
Right, right. So we've got clear navigation, easy to read text.
Yeah.
What else is on the checklist?
One that I find really interesting is alt text for images.
Okay.
You know how you see captions on videos so you can understand what's happening even without the sound?
Yeah.
Alt text is similar, but for pictures. It's a short description embedded in the website's code so that screen readers,
Okay.
which are used by people with visual impairments, can describe the image to the user.
That's a great analogy because I use captions all the time, especially when I'm like scrolling through social media without headphones.
Right.
Never thought about how images could be made accessible in a similar way.
It's all about making sure everyone can understand the content, whether they can see it or not. Another big one is keyboard accessibility. Think about trying to navigate a website
Oh, okay.
using only the tab and enter keys.
Okay.
That's how someone who can't use a mouse might experience the web.
All right.
So every function on a website should be accessible using just the keyboard.
Wow. This is making me really rethink how I experience websites. I take
Yeah.
it for granted,
Right.
that I can just click around with the mouse. It's pretty eye-opening to think about how many people might be excluded
Yeah.
just because they navigate differently.
And here's a statistic from the source that really highlights that
Okay.
71% of users with disabilities will leave a website immediately
Wow.
if it's not accessible.
71%, that's huge.
Yeah.
Imagine like that many customers walking out of a physical store
Why?
because they couldn't get through the door.
Yeah.
Businesses need to like wake up and realize that they're
Yeah.
potentially alienating a massive chunk of their audience.
That's right. The EAA is not just about ethical considerations. It makes good business sense, too.
So who exactly needs to pay attention to this? Is it every single business operating in the EU?
For the most part, yes.
Okay.
Especially any business offering digital products or services to consumers. We're talking web shops, service providers, online platforms.
Right.
If you're in the EU, you're online. The EAA likely applies to you.
But there are some exceptions, right? The source mentions small businesses.
Yes, businesses with under 10 employees and less than 2 million euros in annual revenue are exempt.
Okay.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Even if you're exempt, it's still worth considering making your website accessible.
Why would a small business that's not legally required to comply still want to make these changes?
Well, think about it. 1 in 6 people has a disability.
Hmm.
By making your website accessible, you're opening your doors to a much wider audience
Yeah.
and demonstrating a commitment to inclusivity.
Right.
Plus, accessible design often leads to better user experiences for everyone,
Hmm.
not just people with disabilities.
Like that saying, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've established that accessibility is important for ethical reasons, for
Right.
business reasons.
Yeah.
But what about the users themselves?
Hmm.
Why should you, our listener, care about the EAA even if you don't own a business? I think it's easy to get caught up in the statistics and, the guidelines.
Yeah.
But we got to remember the human element.
Right.
We're talking about real people here
Yeah.
who might be excluded from accessing information online just because a website isn't designed with their needs in mind.
Absolutely, you're right. While the source material we're looking at today focuses on the technical stuff, it's so important to understand the impact it has on people's lives,
Right.
Imagine being unable to apply for a job or book a doctor's appointment,
Yeah.
or even connect with friends and family online
Wow.
just because a website is inaccessible. It's a big deal.
I've actually been reading some personal accounts online
Oh, yeah.
of people with disabilities sharing their experiences with these, inaccessible websites. And it's eye-opening, to say the least.
It is.
One story that really got to me was about a student who couldn't access their course materials online
Wow.
because the university website wasn't compatible with their screen reader.
Oh, geez.
And it made me realize how much I take for granted.
Yeah.
Being able to, easily navigate the web.
They are powerful reminders of why this matters, It's about creating a digital world where everyone can participate,
Right.
no matter their abilities.
The source we're looking at today,
Yeah.
it actually comes from an agency that helps businesses become EAA compliant. They offer things like accessibility audits and implementation support, that kind of thing.
That's pretty valuable for businesses who, might be feeling overwhelmed by the EAA requirements.
For sure.
It's understandable to feel that way, especially if you don't have a technical background in
Right.
web development or anything.
Yeah, it's like trying to learn a new language.
Right.
It can seem impossible at first,
Yeah.
but with the right guidance, you can become fluent.
Exactly.
And this agency seems to be taking a very hands-on approach. It's not just telling businesses what's wrong.
Yeah.
They're actually helping them fix it.
Right. They work with businesses to create an action plan to make their websites and apps accessible and can even handle the implementation if needed.
Wow, that's
It's about empowering businesses
Yeah.
to create these inclusive digital experiences.
that's a really positive way to frame it.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on
Right.
fear brand penalties or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
They're highlighting the opportunity to reach a wider audience, improve brand reputation, create a better user experience for everyone.
Ken, let's be honest, it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Creating a more inclusive digital world, it should be a priority for businesses, not just a matter of compliance.
So if you're a business owner listening to this and you're feeling a bit lost, just remember you don't have to go it alone.
You got this.
Yeah, there are resources available to help you navigate the EAA.
Yeah.
And make your digital presence accessible to everybody.
Don't let the complexity of the regulations discourage you either. Every step you take towards accessibility,
Yeah.
no matter how small, it's a step in the right direction.
We talked about some of them earlier.
Yeah.
Things like adding alt text to images, ensuring clearer navigation.
Right.
These are pretty simple changes. Yeah.
But they can make a big difference for users with disabilities.
And the great thing about these quick wins is that they often benefit all users, not just people with disabilities,
Right.
Think about how frustrating it is to encounter a website with a confusing layout
Yeah.
and poorly written content.
Well, yeah.
Accessible design, it often just leads to better usability for everyone.
It's like the curb cuts on sidewalks.
Oh, yes.
Originally designed for wheelchair users,
Right.
but parents with strollers benefit.
Totally.
People with rolling luggage.
Yeah,
Delivery people with hand trucks, everybody, really.
it's true. Good design is good design,
Yeah.
whether it's the physical or digital world.
Exactly. Accessibility should be just part of the design process from the beginning,
Yeah.
not an afterthought.
Right.
Now, While the EAA is specific to the European Union,
Yeah.
it's important to remember that accessibility is it's a global issue.
There are similar regulations and guidelines being implemented in other parts of the world, too.
That's right. The United States, for example, has the ADA,
Mm.
which, while it's not as specific to the web as the EAA,
Yeah.
it has increasingly been applied to digital spaces in recent legal cases.
It seems like the digital world is finally catching up to the physical world in
Yeah.
terms of accessibility standards.
Yes.
You know, we wouldn't accept a building that was inaccessible to wheelchair users.
Right.
So why should we accept websites and apps that exclude people with disabilities?
That's a great point. The internet is such a huge part of our lives now.
Yeah.
It's so important to make sure everyone has equal access to the information and the opportunities that it provides.
So whether you're in Europe, North America, or anywhere else in the world, the message is clear. Accessibility matters.
It does.
We all need to be thinking about this issue, both individually and as a society.
It's about creating a world where everyone can participate fully and equally, no matter their abilities.
Now, before we move on,
Yeah.
I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about the power of storytelling.
Oh, yeah.
The source material doesn't really dive into those personal anecdotes,
Right.
but I think it's worth encouraging our listeners to seek out those stories.
I agree. Reading blogs, articles written by people with disabilities,
Yeah.
watching videos, listening to podcasts,
Mhm.
all of those can help us understand why accessibility matters on a personal level.
Because when you connect with the human side of this issue,
Yeah.
it goes beyond just compliance.
Right.
It becomes about empathy, compassion, and creating a world that truly works for everyone.
Well said.
You know, at the beginning of this deep dive, I mentioned there was some interesting stuff in the EAA,
Mm.
not just for businesses, but for users too.
Yeah, the what's in it for me angle.
Exactly. We talked about the ethical reasons to care about accessibility
Right.
and the business case for it.
Mm.
But what about the direct benefits for everyday users?
Yeah.
Even those who don't, identify as having a disability.
It's a great point. Often designs created with accessibility in mind end up benefiting everyone.
Yeah, think about captions on videos.
Oh, yeah.
Initially intended for the hearing impaired.
Right.
Now they're used by, tons of people.
Yeah. Especially, when you can't have the sound on.
Yeah, exactly. Or curb cuts on sidewalks,
Mm.
designed for wheelchairs, but parents with strollers benefit.
Totally.
Delivery people with hand trucks,
Yep.
even someone rolling luggage, everyone
dude,
benefits.
Accessibility features, they frequently have that ripple effect,
Yeah.
improving usability across the board.
That's a fantastic point.
Yeah.
The source material doesn't explicitly make that connection,
Mm.
but it's so clear.
Right.
If the EAA pushes companies to make these digital experiences more accessible,
Yeah.
it'll probably just improve the online experience for everybody.
Absolutely. Imagine a world where every website is easy to navigate,
Right.
no matter your tech skills or if you have a bad internet connection.
Yeah. Or online forums that are so well designed, they're almost enjoyable to feel out.
Maybe not enjoyable,
Okay, well.
but definitely less frustrating.
Yeah, less frustrating.
And for older users who maybe don't have the sharpest vision anymore,
Right.
EAA's emphasis on readability, that could be a game changer.
Yeah, it's about making the online world more welcoming for everyone,
Right.
no matter their age,
Mhm.
abilities, or technical proficiency. So even if the EAA feels, far removed from your daily life right now,
Yeah.
its impact will probably be pretty widespread.
A rising tide lifts all boats.
Exactly. This kind of brings up another question.
Okay.
If the EAA is just the beginning,
Yeah.
what does the future hold for accessibility?
That's a good question.
What kind of innovations can we expect to see as technology continues to evolve?
It's really fascinating to think about.
Yeah.
The source material we have is focused on the here and now, but it's exciting to think about what's next.
Yeah.
We're already seeing crazy advancements in things like AI-powered assistive technology.
Oh, wow. Can you give us some examples of what that might look like?
Yeah, imagine personalized websites that adapt to each user's needs, or voice interfaces that make the web truly accessible to anyone,
Wow.
regardless of their limitations.
That's pretty
The
amazing.
possibilities are they're pretty mind-blowing.
Makes you wonder what kind of, brilliant solutions are just around the corner.
Right.
And I bet our listeners have some amazing ideas too.
I bet so.
If you're listening and have thoughts on the future of an inclusive digital world,
Yeah.
share your predictions with us on social media.
Yeah, it's an important conversation because the EAA isn't the finish line.
Right.
It's the starting point
Yeah.
for a more accessible and equitable digital future.
Well said. So, to wrap up our deep dive into the European Accessibility Act, the EAA is a significant step towards a more inclusive internet.
Yeah.
And it's something we should all be aware of,
Right.
even those of us outside the EU. Its impact will be felt far and wide.
The key takeaway for me is that
Yeah.
accessibility is not just a legal requirement. It's a human right, and it benefits all of us.
Absolutely. So let's all do our part to make the digital world a more welcoming and inclusive place.
Yeah.
You can start by exploring those quick wins we discussed, or checking out the resources mentioned in the source material.
And never stop asking yourself, how can we make the internet better for everyone?
That's a great question to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the European Accessibility Act. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.